Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles channel. My name is Erin and I've got another book podcast for you today. So I'm going to be covering everything I read in July, which honestly is not that much. I didn't get to do a lot of reading this month. But also I had a really good little library haul recently that I figured I'd go ahead and show you. So let's start with books that I finished first. So I only read 4 books this month, which is pretty low for me. But July was a very, lots of events, lots of, videos that I was filming for my YouTube channel, which meant that I was doing a lot of crafting. And while I'm crafting, I sometimes listen to audiobooks, but I tend to do, YouTube videos or podcasts more often just because it's a little easier to focus on. So I ended up reading 2 physical books this month, 1 audiobook and 1 ebook, so definitely on the low end. But the first book that I read is actually for the book club that I joined recently. So I have a book club that meets every 6 weeks, so this is the second book that I've now read with the book club. But it was called Saturday Night at the Lakeside Supper Club. I'm looking down at my phone to see the title so I don't have to read it from the front like I usually do. I gave this book 5 stars. This book, it gave Gilmore Girls vibes in that, it's a small town, everybody knows each other, there's lots of, quirky side characters and, side plots going on. But I would say it's if you took all of the most emotional Gilmore Girls episodes and put them all together in one book and plunked it down in the Minnesota restaurant industry scene. It follows mostly the story of Mariel Prager, who runs a supper club in Minnesota. And if you don't know what a supper club is, it's something that I actually, as someone who grew up in Illinois, didn't know about until I moved to Wisconsin. But it seems to be the most popular in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Please correct me if it's popular other places too. But it's a restaurant that has a set menu, usually depending on what day of the week it is. But people tend to like them because you can get a fairly large meal for a good price is usually how the business model works. But they're known for good craft cocktails and just a fun social environment in addition to sitting down for a meal. So they tend to be a very there are a lot of people who go every week, type of vibe. But this book it's really sad. I still loved getting to know all the characters and all of the intertwining storylines of those characters, but it is definitely, if you're already having a bad day, this book is going to make it worse. It deals with a lot of family struggles. It, just to kind of warn you before reading the book, because I didn't have this warning, it does deal with both talk of infertility struggles and the death of a child. So just keep that in mind before you read this. But if you're looking for a book that has really lovable characters and really shows you what life looks like for people running these restaurants, it's a really good fit for that. Also, just all of the typical Midwest things that are going on kind of in the background. It's also a multi-generational story if you're into that. Starts with Mariel's grandparents and follows all the way through to the generation after her. So, highly recommend this book with the caveat of it will probably make you cry. But kind of in a therapeutic way, but also kind of just in a sad way. But I gave it 5 stars, so that's what I have to say about that one. The second book I read was kind of my palate cleanser book from Saturday Night at the Lakeside Supper Club, because I wanted something that gave the same emotional vibes but was a little bit funnier. And so when I saw this book at Target, I couldn't resist picking it up, especially because I've loved another series by this author. But this was Lies and Weddings by Kevin Kwan. He wrote the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy, and this book still has the multi-generational characters, family drama vibes, but set with the ultra wealthy in both the UK, well, kind of all of Europe and also in Asia. So, but also like settings throughout the world. Like, I think this book takes place in like countless different cities by the end of it. But it follows Rufus Lung Gresham, who is, and I'm checking names on the inside cover, he's the future Earl of Greshamsbury, and he has fallen in love with his neighbor, Eden Tong, who is a doctor. So she's not quite at the right social tier for him to marry her. And it just follows all of the kind of antics that Rufus's mother goes through trying to get him engaged, trying to get her other two children married to the right people. And there's also kind of a mystery going on behind the scenes. But if you like, well, if you liked Crazy Rich Asians, you will like this book. But I would also say if you like big dramatic storylines, a hint of mystery, and just kind of a peek into like the ultra rich upper class, this is an excellent book for that. And most of it's very funny. I will also say one thing I liked about this book is that even though part of the storyline is that there's lots of scandalous rumors flying around about everyone, it is very much a closed door romance. You don't see any explicit scenes on the page, even if they're being discussed in a gossip way by other people. First of all, a lot of what's being gossiped about does not actually occur, but also it's a closed door romance. So if you're looking for that, this is a good fit for you. The next book I read, I'm gonna show the cover on my phone because I read it as an audiobook, but I finished the Gilded Duology by Marissa Meyer. I don't know why my phone is taking so long to load. There we go. So I read Cursed, which is the second book in the Gilded Duology. I also gave this one 5 stars. This was the wrap up to the first book, and the duology together is heavily based off of Rumpelstiltskin and European, mostly Germanic, I believe, folklore and fairy tales. I also really enjoyed this book, and this is also another good author who does mostly closed door romances. And the fantasy elements and the world building in this duology were absolutely fantastic. I do highly recommend listening to them as an audiobook, partially for the pronunciation of characters' names, because there are a lot of names of characters that are not based in English. So there would be some that, like, I probably would have struggled with the pronunciation if I had just read them on the page instead of listening to it. But also the narrator who works with Marissa Meyer's books, I'm forgetting what her name is, Rebecca Soleil, I forget how she pronounces it, does a fantastic job voicing the characters and really giving it like a good atmospheric vibe to the books. But highly recommend the duology. It's kind of right on the cusp between a young adult series and a new adult series. I believe the main character, Cyrilda, I think is 19 when the first book starts. So they're definitely like right on the line between those two age categories. So if you're looking for kind of a transitional book between young adults and new adults, like you're not quite ready to leave the young adult books, but you want your characters a little bit older and slightly more mature, this would be a good fit for you. And it's a really great fairy tale. I won't say it's explicitly a retelling, it's a good twist on a fairy tale. And then the last book I read this month, I read as an ebook, so I'll show you on my phone again, but it was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I'll see if it focuses on my phone. It might be having a little trouble. Grady Hendrix is known for very quirky horror books. And something that I have noticed about him is that he has a really good talent for making something that seems very mundane or like maybe even slightly creepy and making it very scary. I gave this book 5 stars. This story follows a woman named Louise who finds out her parents have passed away in a car accident, and she has to go back home to try to sell their house with her brother, who's making things very difficult for her. Other things that she that you as the reader discover as she goes through this is that her mother was very into doing puppet performances. There are like puppeteer friends who show up at the funeral. The house is full of puppets and dolls. She finds the puppets that her mom used to tell her stories when she and her brother were children, and it just goes downhill from there. If puppets did not freak you out before, they will after you read this book. But there's such a good, like, storyline whiplash between the, like, ridiculousness of, like, the details of these puppet shows and what Louise's childhood was like, to some, like, really dark plot details, and also the house getting progressively more and more terrifying as the story goes on. I have read a couple other books by this author. I really enjoyed Horror Store, which is like haunted IKEA, or actually I think it was more like if IKEA was based in a cult. I can't remember exactly. It's been a while. And I read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires as well. So highly recommend this author. I'm going to be checking out his other books because this is one of the best horror books that I've read in a long time. I was definitely hooked and torn between like laughing at all the ridiculous details and having to close the book and read something and like watch or read something different for a while in order to not go to bed scared. Those are all the books that I read this month. So again, it was a pretty light reading month. I had a lot of projects I was working on where I couldn't read at the same time because sometimes I enjoy knitting and reading on my tablet. But I didn't have any projects that worked for that. They were all too detailed in order to do the knitting on the tablet at the same time. But I did end up doing a lot of walks this month where we checked out books from little libraries. So I figured I'd show you those, read the backs, and maybe they'll pop up later in another video if I do end up reading them. The first one I picked up is called The Invisible Husband of Frick Island. And this was one I definitely pulled because the cover looked cool. But the back says, sometimes all you need is one person to really see you. Piper Parrish's life on Frick Island, a tiny remote town smack in the middle of Chesapeake Bay, is nearly perfect. Well, aside from one pesky detail. Her beloved husband Tom is dead. When Tom's crab boat capsized and his body wasn't recovered, Piper, rocked to the core, did a most peculiar thing. She carried on as if her husband were not only still alive, but right there beside her. She cooked him breakfast, walked him to the docks each morning, and met him for their standard weekly dinner date at the One-Eyed Crab. And what were the townspeople to do but go along with their beloved widowed Piper? Anders Caldwell's career is not going well. An ambitious young journalist, he'd hoped to be a national award-winning podcaster by now, rather than writing fluff pieces for a small-town newspaper. But when he gets an assignment to travel to remote Frick Island and cover their boring annual cakewalk fundraiser, he stumbles upon a much more fascinating tale. An entire town pretending to see and interact with a man who does not actually exist. Convinced it's the career-making story he needs for his podcast, Anders returns to the island to begin covert research and spend more time with the enigmatic Piper. But he has no idea that out of all the lives he's about to upend, it's his that will change the most. So this also looks like it's going to be a sad book. Obviously, it starts with the death of Piper's husband. But I kind of wanted to get a couple more like very summery books back in, and because this takes place on an island in Chesapeake Bay, it seemed like a good like late summer book to read. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to squeeze it in before the start of the school year, but I'm definitely gonna try. And I think that's all I had to say about this one. I am excited to read it. It looks like, oh, there's a bookmark inside. That's cute. Free little bookmark too. Yeah, I think that's all I had to say about this one. The next one I picked is The Couple at the Table by Sophie Hannah. There's a little library near me that does almost exclusively thrillers and mysteries, not really horror. Definitely thrillers and mysteries. And I grabbed this one from there. So this one says, honeymooners at a luxury resort receive an ominous warning with deadly consequences in the latest gripping, twisty, psychological thriller from New York Times best-selling author Sophie Hannah. Jane and William are enjoying their honeymoon at an exclusive couples-only resort, until Jane receives a chilling note warning her to beware of the couple at the table nearest to yours. At dinner that night, 5 other couples are present, and none of their tables is any nearer or farther away than any of the others. It's almost as if someone has set the scene in order to make the warning note meaningless, but why would anyone do that? Jane has no idea. Someone at the resort will be dead before breakfast, though, and all the evidence will suggest that no one there that night could have possibly committed the crime. So, kind of giving me like a closed room mystery vibe, almost like And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, but taking place at a luxury resort, which I have discovered is kind of a setting that I like for thrillers. I've read a couple that take place like at beach houses or like at high-end hotels and stuff like that. So this seemed like another good summery thriller, whether or not I'll actually get to it this summer or not. Next one I picked up is How to Find Love in a Bookshop by Veronica Henry. And this one, the back says, the enchanting story of a bookshop, its devoted new owner and faithful readers, and the extraordinary power of books to heal the heart. Nightingale Books, nestled on the main street of an idyllic little village, is a dream come true for book lovers. But owner Amelia Nightingale is struggling to keep the shop open after her beloved father's death, and the temptation to sell is getting stronger. The property developers are circling, yet Amelia's loyal customers have become like family. For them, the shop is much more than what's on its shelves. It's a place of romance, long-held secrets, and unexpected hopes for the future. So this seemed more of like a sweet story, even though it starts sad. So with kind of some of the other darker books I tend to read, I thought this would be a good one for what I read for the fall and winter as a little bit of a palate cleanser. Next book I picked up, I believe this one is a YA book, but it's called The Young World by Chris Weitz. I think that's how you say his last name. This one, I know I got from a little library, but it wasn't one of the ones near me. I think it was when I was out for a walk with a friend in her neighborhood. But this one on the inside cover says, Welcome to New York, a city ruled by teens. After a mysterious sickness wipes out the rest of the population, the young survivors assemble into tightly run tribes. Jefferson, the reluctant leader of the Washington Square tribe, and Donna, the girl he's secretly in love with, have carved out a precarious existence among the chaos. But when a fellow tribe member discovers a clue that may hold the cure for the sickness, 5 teens set out on a life-altering road trip, exchanging gunfire with enemy gangs, escaping cults and militias, and braving the wilds of the subway, all in order to save humankind. And this is one I picked up because now that I'm a school librarian who works with middle school kids, I'm kind of on the hunt for YA books that are still appropriate for like 7th and 8th graders to read. I don't count 6th graders in with YA. It's definitely like only 7th and 8th graders. So I've been trying to pick up some YA books to kind of test read to see if they're ones that we could include in our library. And I know that our kids like, well, kids in general right now really like the dystopian books, and I thought that this was a good fit for that. It does look like it might end up being a little bit dark, but I figure if kids have read The Hunger Games, this is on the same level as that. So I'm going to give it a test read to see if it's a good fit for them. This next one was also grabbed with the same idea in mind. This is Iron King by Julie Kagawa, which I know I've seen before. I think it was popular when I was a teenager, but I never ended up reading it, so I'm kind of curious to see what it's about. So there's 2 parts to the synopsis on the back. One is like from the main character, and then there's like an actual synopsis. So it says, My name is Megan Chase. In less than 24 hours, I'll be 16. Countless stories, songs, and poems have been written about this wonderful age when a girl finds true love and the stars shine for her and the handsome prince carries her off into the sunset. I don't think it will be that way for me. Then the synopsis says, Megan Chase has a secret identity, one she could never have imagined. Something has always felt slightly off in Megan's life, ever since her father disappeared before her eyes when she was 6. She has never quite fit in at school or at home. When a dark stranger begins watching her from afar, and her prankster best friend becomes strangely protective of her, Megan senses that everything she's known is about to change. but she could never have guessed the truth, that she is the daughter of a mythical fairy king and is a pawn in a deadly war. Now Megan will learn just how far she'll go to save someone she cares about, to stop a mysterious evil no fairy creature dare face, and to find love with a young prince who might rather see her dead than let her touch his icy heart. So this one seemed kind of the cross-section between fantasy and romance, which I know a lot of teens are looking for, but since we have so many new adult or just plain adult books that have come out recently that are in the romantasy genre, it has become kind of hard to find clean books in that category. So I'm hoping that because this one is actually YA, it'll have some better results. The last one I picked up was also just, I actually don't even remember what this one was about. But it's called A Million Junes by Emily Henry. And I know Emily Henry is a popular author. This doesn't look like her usual style book, to the point of where I'm almost wondering if it's a different Emily Henry. I don't know. This is her author picture on the back. So you guys let me know. Is there more than one Emily Henry, or is this the same popular author? This one says, for as long as Jack June O'Donnell has been alive, her parents have had only one rule: stay away from the Angert family. But when June collides, quite literally, with Saul Angert, sparks fly and everything June has always known is thrown into chaos. Who exactly is this gruff, sarcastic, but seemingly harmless boy who has returned to their hometown of Five Fingers, Michigan, after 3 mysterious years away? And why has June, an O'Donnell to her core, never questioned her late father's deep hatred of the Angert family? After all, the O'Donnells and the Angerts may have mythic legacies, but for the tall tales they weave, both founding families are tight-lipped about what caused their century-old rift between them. As Saul and June's connection grows deeper, they find that the magic, ghosts, and coywolves of Five Fingers seem to be conspiring to reveal the truth around the harrowing curse that has plagued their bloodlines for generations. Now June must question everything she knows about her family and father she adored, and she must decide whether it's finally time for her and all the O'Donnells before her to let go. So this also seems kind of in the romantasy category, a little bit more on the like paranormal side than like fairies. And I'm not sure if it's a YA or if it's an adult book, but I figured it was also a good one to kind of check and pre-read and see if it would be something that my students would be interested in. But that's all I've got for you this time. This is a much shorter What I Read in a Month podcast than usual. I'm hoping that I can get back into a more solid reading habit over the next few weeks. I actually do tend to read more when I'm working because, well, first of all, I'm a librarian, so I'm going to have to read some books while I'm at work just to like test read them. I already have a bin in my like desk area of books that I've pulled from the kids' shelves that I want to read. Most of them are in the like middle grade young adult category. I tried to pick ones that I had never seen kids check out before so that I can read them and kind of be like, hey, if you like this type of book, you should read this. So just trying to try some new things in that category. But yeah, hopefully I'll have some more books for you next month, or it'll be a really busy August and we'll be in the same boat again. One of those two. But that's going to be it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in more book-related or craft-related things here on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below so that you can be notified of all of my videos right here on YouTube. And if you would like to follow me on other social media sites, that information will be in the description box below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.